They came back from Italy with salt still on their skin and a truth that wouldn't stay quiet. Ridge had pulled Brooke out of the water, and then, on a stone terrace that had seen other vows break and mend, he kissed her. One decision that shook every plan laid out on elegant stationery back in Los Angeles. Taylor felt the quake from a continent away, and when Ridge walked into a room that used to feel safe, she didn't ask for a story. She asked for the record, complete and public, because she refused to be the woman whose wedding proceeded under a shadow that everyone could see. Her ultimatum was clean and final: tell the whole truth or the wedding stops without a date, without a dress, without the next step, and that line drew Ridge into the tightest corner he's ever known. If he tells the truth, he loses the woman who has waited for him to choose her without footnotes. If he hides behind soft language and euphemism, he keeps a ceremony and misplaces his honor, and on the other side of the same blast, Brooke has to decide if she's willing to be protected by ambiguity again. If she can stand inside a love that's wrapped in fog and presented as clarity to everyone else. The facts don't need embellishment. The sea turned on Brooke without warning. Ridge, already a man who can't watch someone he loves go under, dove after her. He got her to the rocks, held her while her breath evened. If gratitude was the only fuel, that would have been the end. But something old and stubborn and unspent moved between them, and he kissed her. It wasn't an accident. It wasn't a goodbye. It was the kiss that says a truth you don't have the courage to announce in words, and as Italy glowed, they stood in its light too long to pretend it meant nothing. Back home, time stopped being poetic and turned practical. Save the dates on refrigerators, fittings on calendars, a guest list that read like a fashion registry, and a bride who looked at her groom and saw an answer he hadn't spoken. Taylor has survived too much to barter with denial. She went to Ridge and said, "Say everything, not a reduced version that helps you keep me. Look at our children. Look at our families, look at me, and say it plain, or we pause indefinitely," and in that one move she made the stakes real. There would be no graceful glide to the altar on a lie. There would be no self-protective silence that let two histories coexist. There would be a man standing on a line, and choosing which side meant he could look in the mirror. Ridge tried to solve it the way he solves designs: move a seam, alter a hem, adjust the drape. It didn't work. The problem wasn't tailoring, it was courage. Steffi saw it first in the way her father went quiet when she said Italy. Thomas saw it in the sketches that got abandoned at half lines. Eric heard it in the pauses that weren't there last week. Donna and Katie felt it in Brooke's voice on the phone, the way she tried to redirect and landed right back on that terrace. Hope didn't need hints. Her mother came home shiny and shaken, and Hope knows the difference between nostalgia and combustion. The house filled with people who wanted answers for different reasons, and into that noise Taylor brought the only order that makes sense in a family like this: a meeting. It wasn't a press conference, at least not at first. It was a room at Forrester Creations where the glass looks out on a city that thrives on stories, and inside, a circle of family that has rewritten the same triangle for decades. Taylor didn't hide her terms. The public part would come later. An official statement or a limited release to stop rumor from becoming the only record. But first, the private truth. He would say what he did and what it meant. She would decide if her wedding could survive it. Brooke would choose whether to accept the role of a whispered secret again, and the rest would live with the fallout. Ridge stood up because sitting looked too much like hiding. He looked at Taylor first, then Brooke, then the children who have lived through every permutation of the story. His voice didn't shake, and that made it worse, because steadiness told them this wasn't a slip. It was a choice. He said Italy, he said the rescue. He said the terrace, he said I kissed her, and he didn't add it didn't mean anything, because it meant something. He tried to keep it clean. No excuses, no retconning, no assigning of fault to a coastline, just the acknowledgement that in a moment of heat and clarity, he crossed a line that a fiancé cannot ignore. Steffi squeezed Taylor's hand. Thomas looked at the floor as if the carpet could take the hit for all of them. Eric closed his eyes. Donna exhaled like she'd been holding her breath for years. Katie kept her spine straight. Hope looked at her mother and let a small strength flow in her direction. And Brooke, who has been painted as reckless and defined as resilient, didn't blush and didn't gloat. She absorbed the sentence and nodded once because she had the same duty. To stop pretending the kiss was a glitch in an otherwise flawless matrix. Taylor didn't make a scene. She didn't need to. Her line remained where she drew it. "Thank you for saying it," she told Ridge, "because truth is a currency even when it bankrupts you." "Now we stop," she added, "because values without consequences are slogans. No new date. No, we just need a week, no halfway, until I see a man who can close a chapter without reopening another. I will not stand in front of a room and pretend trust is intact." And then she looked at Brooke and gave her the respect rivals don't often give. "I won't let anyone reduce you to a mistake. You are a person. You always were. My boundary is not a verdict on you. It's a choice for me," and that restraint cut through the air like a clean blade. The room didn't explode. It settled, and into that settlement stepped the other half of the story, Brooke's decision. She has been called many things: temptation, salvation, chaos, constant, and maybe all of them fit on the worst days. She cleared her throat and did not perform. "I won't be defended by silence," she said, "not to Ridge, not only. I won't go back to the arrangement where we keep something alive by refusing to name it. If what happened in Italy is a confession, then say it without hiding me, and if it's a mistake you regret, then say that too. I will not wear ambiguity like a shield. It never protects. It only delays the wound," and that was the core of her test. Not choose me, but choose honesty and accept the price. Bill, leaning in the doorway like a storm that didn't get invited, muttered that the truth never killed a wedding that deserved to live, and Katie gave him a look that put him back into his corner. This was not his ring to polish. Once spoken in the family, the story required oxygen. Taylor insisted on the public piece not out of humiliation, but because a wedding powered by damage control is a long funeral. PR drafted 3 statements. One that erased Italy, one that framed it as a misunderstanding, and one that read like what happened. Ridge read them, handed back the first 2, and said, "Use the third," which said in flat, careful words that in Italy, after an incident in the water. He and Brooke shared a kiss, that he had informed his fiancée, and that, in respect for the relationship, the wedding plans were paused. It asked for privacy and offered no spin. It put his name on the act and took Brooke out of the role of the unnamed rumor. It fixed nothing. It told the truth. The reaction was immediate because that's how this world works. Gossip sites lit up. Commentators recycled the history as if they were giving the country a refresher course in Forrester Logan politics. Allies picked sides. Enemies enjoyed the spectacle. But the only jury that mattered had already rendered the interim verdict. Taylor stepped back from the aisle. Brooke stepped back from the fog. Ridge stood in the middle of a floor that didn't feel like his anymore. At the office, work turned into a refuge and a reminder. Sketches demanded focus. Fittings gave him structure, but every fabric looked like a question. Every seam looked like a choice. Steffi held the line for the business and kept her eyes off the personal minefield. Thomas threw himself into design to avoid saying what he wasn't sure he believed. That their father could ever truly break the pattern. Eric set the tone of dignity, deal with it in-house, show up for the work, bleed in private. Donna put her arm around Brooke in hallways and mouthed, "I've got you." Katie sat with her sister at night and didn't give advice. Hope told her mother the one thing that mattered. Your value isn't up for debate just because a man can't decide what to do with his heart. Taylor did not spin. She did not punish. She simply refused to cut corners around a wound. When Ridge came to her house to try and negotiate the pause into a timeline, she held her ground. "I won't be measured against a feeling you won't measure." I won't accept a countdown that only exists to get you back to the comfort of a plan. If you want me without a foot in yesterday. And then she did the hardest thing in her position. She wished Brooke peace without softening. I'm sorry the moment that made you feel seen came with this recoil. You deserve clarity too. Brooke, for her part, didn't convert the kiss into a campaign. She set a guardrail. I won't be the reason you break something just to rebuild it again around me. If you finalize this, finalize it because it's true, not because Italy made you drunk on memory. And she told Ridge with a calm that surprised them both, no more doors half open. Close one, and then knock on the other, or don't knock at all. Days became a schedule of accountability. Ridge met with PR and legal and family, and still had to answer to himself. In quiet, he replayed the terrace and refused to reduce it to weather. He admitted what the kiss said out loud. That his heart didn't respect his calendar, but he also admitted what Taylor demanded, that a man can feel two truths and still be obligated to choose one path. The cleanest line forward would be ugly. There was no version where they put the vase back together and pretend the cracks are a pattern. There was only the adult choice, end one relationship completely before you even think of beginning another. Or keep the relationship and close every door that isn't the one you vowed to open. He had lived decades avoiding that sentence. Now he couldn't avoid it and keep his self-respect. The public quieted faster than the families did. The story aged by the second in the hands of strangers. Inside, it stayed present. There were practicalities, return deposits, stall vendors, call the venue, inform guests that there was no new date. Taylor handled them with cool precision. She didn't dramatize. She didn't collapse. She protected her children from becoming mouthpieces. She left tabloids unread. In private, she let it hurt and then moved it into motion. Therapy appointment for herself, not as a label, as a tool. A reminder to Ridge that he could do the same if he wanted to break the pattern for real. She offered nothing performative. She demanded nothing she wouldn't give. Brooke made her own list. Take the calls that are from love. Ignore the ones that want a quote. Show up to work. Eat something green. Sleep even if it's only an hour. Tell Hope the truth without dramatics. Remind herself that a kiss isn't a contract and also not a ghost. She set one boundary in steel. She would not meet Ridge in private rooms until he could walk in as a man who had completed something, not as a man juggling guilt and desire like props in a familiar act. Then came the moment that pushes every soap story through its hinge. Ridge asked Taylor to meet at the house where the first version of their future had been written. He didn't bring flowers. He didn't rehearse speeches. He brought the decision she demanded. He said that the kiss didn't create his confusion. It revealed it. That the decent thing was to end this engagement now, not because he had chosen Brooke as a reward for chaos, but because standing beside Taylor in a suit would insult everything he had told her about respect. Taylor listened. And for a second the room held both relief and injury, because clean pain still cuts. She thanked him for telling it before a dress existed, before a minister cleared his throat, before guests shuffled in their seats. She told him to leave and not come back until he wasn't using her home to pivot. She cried after he closed the door and nobody saw it but the wall and the picture frames. He didn't go to Brooke that night. He went to Eric's, because ending something requires witness. He sat with his father and took the quiet lecture that loving two people is common, that honoring one at a time is the job, that growing up is late but not impossible. He slept on a couch and woke up with a backache that felt like an appropriate tax on the life he has built. The next day he called Brooke and asked to see her in a place that didn't belong to either of their histories. She chose a public bench in a garden where nothing dramatic could happen, and he told her the same thing he told Taylor with the part that mattered to her. He had ended the engagement because he couldn't stand on a promise he had already betrayed, but that didn't mean Brooke owed him anything. If she wanted to build something, they would build it slow, in daylight, without secrecy, without contingency. If she didn't, he would take that as the cost of finally doing one thing right. Brooke didn't rush to yes. She asked the only question worth asking. Can you live a love that isn't protected by fog, that doesn't need a crisis to feel alive? And Ridge, for once, didn't romanticize dysfunction. If I can't, he said, then I don't deserve you, and that answer didn't fix their past, but it aligned with her boundary. She didn't kiss him. She pressed his hand and said, then start by telling our families what you just told me. Start by standing in a room with Taylor and owning the sequence, without casting me as fate or mistake. Start by being the man who risks being the villain in the short term to stop being a coward for the long term, and he agreed, because the alternative was the old loop. That evening they gathered again, not to pick apart, but to acknowledge. Ridge spoke first and didn't outsource the pain. He said he ended the engagement. He said he wouldn't pursue Brooke in private while telling the world he was single. He said he would accept their judgments and asked only that they keep Taylor out of the crossfire. Taylor arrived midway, heard enough, and nodded at the part that mattered. He had cut the cord without blaming anyone else for holding it. Brooke didn't make a claim. She made a promise to the room and to herself that if she and Ridge walked forward, it would be slow and honest or not at all. Steffi stood, stared at her father with a daughter's exasperation and love, and said, please be the man you would tell me to demand. And he said he would try, and she shot back, try in days, not decades. The wedding didn't happen. The scandal did. The dignity did too. Taylor reclaimed her heir and refused to let anyone hand her the role of victim. She turned a pause into a principle. Brooke kept her compass pointed at clarity. She refused to carry a love that needed fog to survive. Ridge walked into the hard work of living without the shelter of a lie and without the adrenaline of secrecy. The triangle that has fed this city's gossip for years didn't disappear. It evolved. And at the center of it, a kiss in Italy did what it was always going to do. It forced three adults to stop rehearsing and pick a scene where the direction is simple even if the acting is hard. Tell the truth. Accept who leaves. Build what remains in daylight.